Hey guys, welcome to a very special episode of Heffe's Chopshop. This is part 2 of the VK, and if you haven't seen part 1, go back and watch it. Watch us discover all the history of this thing before we try and get it running today. Try and drive back to the original owner after it's been sitting in a shipping container for over 10 years. So subscribe and let's get into it. Before we get too deep on this barn find, I've been asked to add a few things specifically. So we've got 2 oil filters so we can run a flush of oil through the engine for 10 or 15 minutes and then swap it out for good stuff. So to go with that, we've got 2 lots of oil. We've got a bunch of degreaser, which I'll use for this car and next week's car. Don't forget to subscribe. And then we've got some gear oil for the diff. We've got an air filter. We've got plugs and leads. We've got a fuel filter, and then the brake cleaner just to clean up whatever we find along the way. Brake fluid to make sure the brakes work, because that's pretty important. And then the belts, because they're all probably 20 years old and a bit crusty. Then, because this is fuel injected, I've got a fuel pump in a bottle. It's very ghetto. So it's just a fuel pump in a half cup bottle of petrol with a 12-volt battery supply and a fuel pump feed. And then we've got a fresh battery for the car, just in case we get that far today. So as you can see, we picked a wonderful day to do this. It's nice and wet. Let's dive in. So here we have the wonderful 202 black motor. This thing is injected, apparently vacuum and electric controlled, which is gonna make it a little tricky today. But we're just gonna treat this like a regular engine. We're gonna try and drain the oil. We're gonna try and get some spark plugs out and lube all the cylinders up before we turn this thing over, because this has been sitting for a really long time. After that, then we can decide what we want to do. So drain the fuel tank, drain the diff, bleed the brakes, put a new air filter in it, and give all the fluids and everything a nice freshen up, replace the belts, make sure this thing turns over, put new leads on it, and drive it. Straight off the oil pan, yeah? I've got the car up on jack stands now, so we can get underneath it, drain the oil, drain the fuel tank later today. But before you get underneath the car, you want to give this a bit of a shake. Make sure it's nice and secure and nothing wobbles or falls off or jack stand moves or whatever. So it's nice and safe. I'm happy to get underneath that. So we're going to start off by taking the leads off. We're going to take the spark plugs out. We're going to put a little bit of oil or juice or trans fluid in the top, and then put new spark plugs back in and new leads back on right away, and just delete that as a problem. And then we'll let that sit for a little bit and we'll try and turn the engine over by hand with a spanner. And then if that works, then we can drain the oil and go from there. So the first thing we're going to do is rip the spark plug leads off. I've got new ones already, so that's good to go. We can pull the plugs out. I've got new plugs as well. We can check how it was running. So this thing was apparently running before it was parked in the container. So then once all that's out, we can put a bit of trans fluid into the cylinders, and that will help free up the rings and not scratch all the sides of the bores before this thing even turns over. Then we can put new plugs in, new leads on, and then we can try and turn this thing over and see if it's worth going any further than that. So the first thing we need to do is take this intake off, get it out of the way to get into these spark plugs and the leads. Now, I'm not super familiar with a Commodore 202, so I've got some tape and a texter, so I'm going to label these leads and then I can replace them one by one. But what we've got for plugs is stuff that Auto Pro has suggested me or recommended, so thank you very much to those boys, they always help me out. So we've got BPR 6EFS-13s, so 6 of those, and then we've got a set of Top Gun leads. They are TG6012. So let's get this intake off and rip out the spark plugs. So the first thing to do is take this intake off. So there's 2 hose clamps down here, which I have undone. There is a breather back here, which is already off. So this thing needs to come out of the way so we can get into the plugs. So I've labelled the front 2 cylinders. I can pull the spark plug leads off, and then I can pull the plugs out and juice up those 2 cylinders. This front cylinder is very difficult. The aircon is right where the tool needs to be. Small little uni joint once you've cracked it open, and then you should be able to get in there. Cylinder 1 looks pretty decent. Cylinder 2 reasonable. So I don't have a camera, so I can't put a camera in there. So what we're gonna do is just put a funnel into the spark plug hole and then pour a little bit of trans fluid in there. So Jackson's gonna be a hand and just hold this in place. And then I will pour trans fluid into the funnel. So this won't hurt anything, it'll just be a little smoky. But if you put way too much in, you may hydrolock a cylinder. We should probably turn this over without spark plugs in.
I thought that's what you were going to do.
That makes way more sense.
Yeah.
I can't see anything in your hands anyway.
I'm trying to guide you.
Oh, I won't be guided by no man. So we'll let that sink in and we'll go to the next 4 cylinders, repeat the process, and then we can turn it over by hand, and then those cylinders will have a nice lubricated layer of trans oil on top. So this is going to be kind of awkward. I've done the front 3 cylinders. The back 3 are pretty buried, so I'm going to have to take some coolant hoses off and try and move some stuff out the way to get to these spark plugs.
Not to interrupt what you're doing, Jeff, but I've just discovered something pretty incredible about this.
What's going on?
It's a turbo. It says it right there.
Rotary.
It's a turbo rotary.
One of them fancy commodores.
Factory turbo rotary VK. Look at the absolute mess you've made.
Yeah, it happens. All right, so I'm gonna take this air conditioner hose off because it is in the way of everything, and then I can hopefully move these coolant lines out of the way. There's just a lot of stuff on this side of the engine bay that is very much in the way. So getting to those rear 2 cylinders is proving quite difficult. Now I'm expecting this to have no charge because it's been sitting for 12 years. So fingers crossed we don't get a call from Captain Planet.
Really curious to know who put these plugs in because they obviously rattle gunned them in.
Yeah, they're very tight. Or they're corroded in, I guess. So even Jackson's given it a go. And we've both agreed it's very tight. So I went and grabbed a breaker bar.
I just need a Jacko spanner hands, mate.
He reckons he's got it. Is it just spinning or is it actually coming undone?
I have no idea.
Nice, all right, he's got it. Looks pretty decent, which is nice. Yeah, they're all corroded on the outside, which is fine. They're not corroded on the inside, which is the problem. So now we've only got cylinder 5 to take off, and it's hidden behind this cruise control thing, so we might have to take that out the way. Cylinder 5 off. Let's try and get the spark plug out of here. It's not even just the first initial crack, it's like the threads are actually rusty. It's real bad.
Yeah, the thread's a bit corroded into the head.
As long as we don't strip one and the new ones go in, doesn't matter.
Hopefully that's not a foreshadowing.
Yeah, I hope not. Cylinder 5. So they all look pretty decent, they're just a bit corroded. They're probably good enough you could go again, but given that we're giving this thing a birthday, it's time for a proper birthday. All right, let's get some lube in cylinder 5 and 6. And then we can finally see if this thing turns over and if we've wasted our day. So far.
No day is wasted when we're doing fun things, mate.
True, we're gonna hang out with Jackson. It's a nice day. All right, so I have found my funnels now, but a minute ago I didn't think I was gonna be able to find it. So I grabbed a plastic bag, you can cut the corner off and put some trans fluid in here and just squeeze it into this other little dipsticky funnel thing we've got. So I will use the regular funnel, but I might use a bit of the plastic bag trick as well.
Like a bit of a cake piping bag sort of situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a cake piping bag.
Where were the funnels anyway?
In the MISC tools section.
Oh.
They're new ones, they're not the ones I was looking for. So we got the corner cut off. We can get down here reasonably easily. Put the corner of the plastic bag into the funnel that we've got, or the cylinder if you are really stuck, and just pour a little bit in. Ta-da! The only problem now is you have an unsealable bag of red. Put that right there where I'm going to knock into it.
Yeah, make sure to spill that all down the paintwork.
Jackson style.
Hey, none of that.
Old Jackson style.
The old you would have.
You would have. The old you would have spilled that everywhere. All right, so we're back on the 6th cylinder now, and we can use our little squeegee bag and squeegee squirt some trans fluid in there. All right, so we're gonna try and turn the engine over. Now, unfortunately, because this has air conditioning and it seems to have 2 pulleys stacked on top of each other, so the first one's bolted to the crank, the second one is bolted with 3 smaller bolts to the first pulley, so that makes it really awkward to turn the crank. So I'm hoping I can turn the alternator, hold the belt, and try and get everything else to turn. So let's give it a shot. It's a 24mm for those playing at home. So I'll try and push on the belt to give some more tension and then try and turn this thing over. No, nothing. Not that.
So that is the crank pulley that you can't get any anything on.
Any tools onto?
And it is separating. It is that heavily corroded.
Paint.
Oh, it's just the paint?
There's a lot of rust on it, but that is just the paint. So now, because we can't get any purchase on the pulley, we're going to try and do what I hate, which is put the battery in and try and give this a little bump start on the starter motor and see if it turns over. I hate doing this because if the starter motor or the engine is no good, you're not going to be able to do it. But also, if the engine is seized up, the starter motor will drive into the flex plate teeth and just rip everything off, which then causes heaps more problems. So let's chuck a battery in and hope this works. All right, so as Vice Grip Garage says, we'll chuck this on and give it a bit of a smell test, see if anything catches on fire, see if anything happens.
Any wires let the magic smoke out?
Yeah, there's no noise, which is good. Let's give this a little bump. We got reds on the dashboard. We've got a charge gauge, which is good. Fuel gauge isn't doing anything. The tacho isn't doing anything. The speedo is stuck at 45. Let's give it a bump. Nice.
Well, that turns over really well. Oh, it's got smells, not burny smells, just interesting smells.
I imagine it's probably all the trans fluid pooping out.
Yeah. I think we had some interesting splashing coming from the aircon as well.
Maybe, yeah. Probably plug that back on for now anyway. So it turns over nice and freely, so that's a really good start. So I'm pretty confident to put these plugs back in, put the leads back on, or put the new leads back on, and then we can drain the oil and try again.
Jeffrey, observations, mate.
What do you got?
We don't know whether this is switched over to LPG or is on petrol.
Right this second, no.
Right this second. We have the gas ring exposed directly to a lead and many leads around it.
It's a fair point.
Probably very lucky that it's not on gas currently.
It'll be fine.
It may have almost
blown it up.
Caused a horrible fire.
The gas cylinder thingy is missing a bunch of hoses also, so I don't know what the go is there.
Gas converter. Yeah.
The gas converter.
We sound really amateurish about this because we know nothing about
Commodores.
Old Holdens, yeah.
And gas.
And gas, yeah, no one knows anything about gas. It's a mystery fuel that's reserved only for forklifts.
So I'm going to chuck these plugs back in and then chuck the leads on, and then we can move on to the oil. All right, so cylinder 1 actually has this conduit on there. I was trying to work out why before, but if you plug it into cylinder 1, it actually rubs on the air conditioning. So I'm going to swap that over to the new lead so it doesn't rub through the new leads. So just pull that off and feed it onto the new guy. There we go, that easy. So I'll plug that back in and then we can move on to the next lead. So we're going to drain the oil because we want to go to lunch. So I'm just going to let this drain over lunch, try and get as much out as we can, and then we'll come back and continue working.
In classic El Jefe's Chopshop style, now the rain has stopped. Where we decided to work on the car is the lowest point in the driveway.
Still wet.
And it's still sopping wet.
(2007).
2007, you reckon? You reckon it went 4 years without an oil change before it was parked?
We're back from lunch. I'm going to try and get this oil filter off. The oil's been draining for probably an hour now. So I'll chuck the plug back in, get this filter off, get it changed over, and then we can fill it up with fresh oil. The oil filter is very tight and also very big, so none of the oil filter tools I've got fit around it. So I've got a ratchet strap wrapped around it to try and get some kind of purchase on it. It's not yet worked.
I can't even see what's going on in there.
Yeah, not much at the moment. Oh, got him. That is so tight.
Someone hated this car.
Someone just didn't know how to work on stuff.
Well, I thought, oh, we're locking it up for 12 years. Let's make it everything so it doesn't come loose.
Whew. I'll show you what I'm doing with the ratchet strap when I get this out of here. Alright, so I got the oil filter off in one piece. So I had this pulling up to try and give it some twist and also hold that strap and the hook nice and tight. And then I put the screwdriver through there so that it can pull up on the hook and push down on the filter, giving us some more rotational leverage. So with those two combined, we managed to get that off, but that should not be that tight. All right, so we're got a new filter here. We're going to use the Cooper one to start with. It's the cheaper of the two. So this one was about $5, the other one was about $15 if you want to save $10. So this is a Cooper WZ30, interchangeable with Z30. We'll chuck that on, we'll chuck in some fresh oil, and we'll see where we get after that.
It's Z, mate.
I knew you were going to say that.
It's Z. Don't let anyone tell you the other one.
Unless it's a 350.
It's still a 350Z, mate.
350Z.
No, 240Z, 260Z.
Don't forget to lube the seal. Bit of fresh oil, just give it a shake. Take the cap off. Bit of oil on your finger. That's all you need. And just get this nice and snug, and then about a half turn. You don't need to absolutely crank it.
You know some filters come pre-lubed?
Do they?
Yeah, Toyota ones do.
Yeah.
Genuine Toyota ones.
Some of them actually say to put oil on them.
Yeah, some of them say to pre-fill.
Apply film of oil to face of rubber seal on new Cooper oil filter.
Yeah.
After rubber seal contacts mounting pad, tighten 2/3 of a turn.
Oh.
Refill oil with new oil. Run engine too hot. Check for leaks. Check dipstick and top up oil if necessary. Thanks, Cooper.
I don't know, what about you guys watching? Are you pre-fill the filter, or do you just let the car do it itself? Make sure to, you know, put that down in the comments.
If the filter's this way, you should normally fill it up. But this one is sideways.
I've never pre-filled a filter.
Me neither. Don't forget to put the sun plug in. I've only forgotten once, but I'll never hear the end of it. Because it was on Emily's car. And it was like a month ago. All right, so now we got the sun plug in, we got the filter on. Let's fill up this baby with new oil.
Yeah, I'm very curious to know what that looks like in there.
Yeah, I don't know.
Can't see much.
Okay. Also, this would come up great with another scrub. Not sponsored. This is the cheap oil that we're using instead of the expensive oil.
Hey, it's got all of the dinosaurs and minerals.
It does. Premium minerals. Everyday protection. We only need to protect for today, not every day.
We're only protecting for about half an hour.
Yeah, probably.
Whatever to operating temp, and then dump it again.
Yep. Take it around the block maybe. All right, so this red engine takes almost 5 litres, and then this one has the big filter, so apparently it's very close to 5 litres. And because this is sat for a long time, I'm just going to fill it right up, all 5 litres, then we can drain it again shortly, in about an hour of running time. Is it leaking out the bottom, Jackson?
Not yet.
Okay. This funnel's a bit small. All right, all 5 litres are in. Let's find out if we've got spark or not.
The easiest way to do that is just hang on to the end of the lead.
Zap yourself into next week.
Yeah, a bit of
zip. Given that I've had a medical history, might get you to do that one.
I've had medical history too. Yeah?
What's your medical history?
I a heart.
Oh, you had heart problems too, didn't you?
I didn't have a heart problem. Turns out my heart is good.
Oh.
I have a really low resting heart rate.
I do know one thing. Your heart's in the right place. Cute. So just to check spark, I'm going to go from the coil to a spark plug. Conveniently, it clips in. Then we're going to put it on somewhere that is earthed, that doesn't let it fall off. Something like that. And we should be able to see a small spark in there when we crank the car over. But when you get the battery off charge and plug that in, and then hopefully fingers crossed, we've got spark, because I don't have any parts to replace all of that. But while we were doing the spark plug leads, Jackson did give the rotor cap and the rotor button a little file and made them a bit nicer and a bit of a clean. So hopefully this works. All right, so we've chucked a battery in. We've got this Optima Marine dual purpose battery. So I picked this for 2 special reasons. It was free, my dad gave it to me. Let's plug it in. I'm gonna go crank the car over and hopefully we get spark on that spark plug.
Yep.
Got spark? Nice. So that spark plug is an old one, but that main lead is off of the coil. So now we can plug the coil into the distributor. The engine's turning over. We've got fresh spark plugs, fresh leads. We know we've got spark. So the only other thing left is air and fuel. I can see the throttle body, so that's got air. And we just need to make sure we've got fuel going. So that'll be a later job. But let's try and get this thing started without doing any more work. I can't hear a fuel pump.
Hold on, dude. Stop that. Stop.
Is gas coming through?
That was gas, man, I reckon. There's something hissing.
Which one was it then?
That's definitely LPG.
Yeah, which was it though?
I don't know. Whoop, that one.
Is that gas?
That's gas. I don't know where it's coming from, but it's definitely gas.
Right, so that one's petrol.
Oh, that stinks.
All right, so we turned the key a minute ago and the fuel pump did kick on for just a brief second. I can't get it to do it again. So we'll see where we go there. But we also got the gas to turn on as well. The gas converter is also missing some hoses. So chances are that's not gonna work anyway. And we don't like gas and we don't want to use it. So hopefully this is on fuel and we'll see if we can get it to start. Fuel pump kicked on for just a small second.
While Jeffrey's dealing with that. Yeah, sure, it's nice sucking straight into the throttle body, but we need some sort of air censoring going on. So some sort of, on a mass scale you might say, some sort of...
Mass airflow, like sensor or something.
Yeah, like a sensor for mass air flowing through it, yeah.
We've got some start your friend, so we can try that, but I will put that back on because Jackson's right. I forgot about that bit. I'm used to carby cars, leave me alone. Spray some start your friend in the tube, put the tube back on, and then that should be enough to just try and... We're just trying to get like 1 or 2 rotations out of it. We don't want it to run properly.
Get the bark off.
Just to get it to... For half a second. Let's put the intake back on. I've never worked on this model Commodore. I've only worked on probably 3 Commodores in my life anyway. I almost make it a mission not to work on Commodores, in fact.
And what, all 3 of those have been VN, VP, VR?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
The good ones. No, VH is...
As far as I'm concerned, this is the end of the good ones.
Nah, this is the start of the bad ones.
All right, so we've got the intake back on. I'm gonna spray some Start Your Friend into the tube and then try and plug this back onto here and we'll try again. This was donated by a subscriber who's currently holding the camera. Thanks, Jackson.
Well, I don't need it because I drive a reliable Toyota, so.
So the starter motor doesn't seem to be turning the engine anymore.
Another couple of clicks, I guess. Rip. Oh, there you go.
She works, it fired off. I can put this intake back on properly and then we can dive into the injectors, see why we're not getting fuel pressure.
It's not like you ever had anything wrong with fuel systems, hey?
Yes, yesterday. I'll show you the solution in just a minute. All right, so next problem is to tackle this fuel system. So that is the fuel line just there. And this goes into the fuel rail, into the injectors, which I'm hoping aren't blocked. So I've got a dodgy fuel system. I'm gonna just disconnect the rear half of the car, just connect to that guy there and try and run some fresh fuel. And then if that works, we can hook it back up and make the back half of the system work. If it doesn't work, we know that the fuel system's good and we can jump into the injectors. So this is my dodgy fuel system. I made it yesterday while I was working on a Honda. So there's a fuel pump in a small jug of fuel. We've got this pressure hose which can be attached to the fuel rail, and then the fuel pump runs out to this 12-volt Milwaukee battery. Clip that in, it turns on, pumps fuel out. So this is very rudimentary and also a bit sketchy, so you have to be very careful that you don't set everything on fire. So we'll be doing that, not the fire part, the careful part. So the fuel line that we want to disconnect is a small Phillips head screw. So we'll take the original one off, try and feed this new one in there, hopefully they're the same size, and do the hose clamp back up. and we can pressurize this fuel system. The hat's backwards, he's very serious.
Now where am I going? This one here? Yeah, I'll see
That one. Ooh,
undoing
he's got it. Jackson's way more patient than I am. Thanks, Jackson.
I'm like a good doctor, mate. I've got heaps of patience.
Good doctor or bad doctor?
No, bad doctor has no patience.
No patience left.
Yeah.
Go, Jackson!
I'm good for something. You just come in as a pretty face once all the hard work's done.
Of course. Everything is so crusty. How does Derek do this all the time?
He has lots of patience.
He's a good doctor. The hose clamps against the rocket cover.
Sure is.
Rocket cover. Keeps the rockets in, bruh. Alright, we squirted fuel everywhere, but it's off.
And it stinks.
And it stinks.
That's bad fuel.
Alright, so this hose just here is the feed line from the fuel pump. So if we turn the ignition on, that's going to squirt absolutely everywhere because the fuel pump is working, but this fuel's kind of bad. So I'm going to try and decant this into a container before we get too much further. So we've got the feed line off of the injector rail, which was quite a pain in the bum. So we've got it plugged into this little Coke bottle here. So we're going to try and get some of this old fuel out. The gauge is reading empty, but who knows. But we want to just get this running, so I'll disconnect this, plug it into here. At least we won't spill fuel everywhere, and we can try and make it run. You ready?
Yeah.
Spray it?
It's pumping. It works well. Now it doesn't.
What's that running on?
Whatever was in there from the ether. It's pumping a fair bit, and this is probably going to overflow shortly. Don't run it anymore, man.
Really?
Yeah, because the bottle's on such a
Oh, on a silly angle, yeah. All right, so this fuel is...
That is not the colour it should be.
This fuel is about 15 years old, 12 to 15 years old. This fuel is about a week old. So we've got a bit of a Ghetto fuel system rigged up. Try and empty this tank a little bit at least. Is it pumping? All right, so now if we can make the car run on something else, we can run the car on the new fuel system. We can run the old fuel out of the old system, and then we can fix the old system once we're done messing around. So I'm gonna try and put this fuel hose that's going from the fuel pump onto the rail and then do up the hose clamp, and hopefully we can feed some fuel to the engine. And for some reason that hose points at the rocket cover, which means you can't get anything on it.
More genius Holden design.
Wonder why they don't have business. It's not on properly, but it's on properly enough. So we've hooked up our Ghetto rigged fuel system, so that's all plugged in. Now we've got the fire extinguisher. So there's a bleed nipple on the front of this fuel rail, so I just want to be able to get in there and press on that. It's just a tyre valve to release some of the old fuel ideally, and then we can try and start this thing. So if I get that lined up, ready to go, and then I plug in the Milwaukee battery to our trusty fuel pump, let it pressurize, bleed some fuel out of it, watch the Schrader valve not shut properly because it's ancient.
That's cool and good. A lot of air in there.
Yeah. It's all cleaned out of old fuel, but I just realised that we're almost out of fuel on our little jug here. So this is fresh 98, but I'm going to put this away from the car so that we only set a litre on fire at a time and not 20 litres. So I did notice that this will actually sit in here quite nicely.
Have the fuel sit directly over the extractors.
Yep, and then put the fuel pump back in. Try not to leak everywhere. And then we can put this over here. Check for leaks. It's surprisingly, everything looks okay. So now if we plug this in and then go try and start the car, if the injectors are good, it'll start. If they're not, it will not. Fuel pump engaged, walk around the car, chuck the ignition on.
Stop it, dude. All I could see is that fuel splashing all over.
Something was rattling like crazy down here too. But it does work. First run in 12 years.
Yeah.
That easy. So now that it runs, which is excellent, I'm going to put the coolant lines back onto the water pump so we don't get water splashing everywhere. We've got a small rattle to find down here. And then also we want to check and make sure that nothing's going to catch on fire or leak. There's a bit of smoke around, but there is a lot of stuff on the engine. So we'll see how we go with that. The fuel system's obviously temporary, and just in a minute after we've run it for a little bit, I'll drain the fuel tank, put some nice fresh fuel in there, connect up the original fuel system again, and we should be able to run it for a fair bit longer. So we've got the two coolant hoses back on for the heater. So now I'm just going to fill this thing with water for now, try and flush through any of the gross bits that are in there, and then we're going to fire it up, try and run it for a bit longer, see if we can find any smoke.
Wow, Jeff, I sure hope that's not the same Coke bottle that had petrol in it not long ago.
It's not. Everything is connected now. We've got coolant in the system. So I'm going to leave the cap off for now. We'll try and run this thing, make sure it's bubbling around and moving, make sure it's not pumping out of there like we have a head gasket failure or something. And we'll just see how this runs, see if we can find any smoke. Ready, Jackson?
Always.
Transporter's burning off.
Oh wow.
Unplug the fuel pump, please, sir. All right, I think that dinging is the fan hitting something, but it seems a bit weird.
Yeah, the smoke doesn't come on camera, hey. It is smoky here.
So because of the trans fluid that we put in the back, that will be putting smoke out of the exhaust pipe, but it does mean that the cylinders are lubed, so that's good. That'll burn off in a couple minutes. Nothing to worry about. As for the dinging noise, unsure. It's that hitting something.
Oh, it sure is.
What's it hitting? Oh, the alternator's not even bolted on, bro.
Huh.
Okay, so we think the noise, the small witnessing noise, is the alternator, because there is some small little marks on the fan, and that sounds the same. So Jackson's going to plug the fuel pump in, I'll start the car, and then I'll get this spanner and pry on the alternator, try and get it away from whatever it's witnessing on, and see if the noise stops. Because there's a bolt missing. Plug the fuel pump in, boy. Cloudy.
No chance of meatballs though.
And that's why we're not using the original fuel pump or fuel. That is brown. And an interrupted stream. That fuel pump should see a doctor.
That probably means there's no fuel left though.
What's that?
That probably means there's no fuel left.
Of course. Yeah, hopefully. Actually, I'll put some fuel in the car and try and pump it out. She purrs. So it is idling a little rough. So we're just going to take the air filter off and see if that has a blockage. It's probably a cylinder, but we'll check this just in case. Not bad at all, really.
That's really not that bad.
So these bolts are holding the air filter box to this plate here, and this plate here is connected to the, like a butterfly for the gas.
Well, I wonder whether that flap is to prevent gas backfires when you're just starting on LPG.
Maybe, yeah. I'm not sure. Maybe you pull it and like prime it or something and then push it in.
I don't know.
I don't know how gas works. It's mad witchcraft.
Yeah, but the evil kind of witchcraft, not the fun kind.
All right, so we've dug into the MAF sensor here and taken the intake apart. There's a small cable that comes through your air filter lid and then into this chain-driven thingy and holds a little finger that rotates and pushes your MAF open. So I assume that's a gas thing. I don't know. So this is actually drilled through the bottom of the sensor. So I'm not sure what the go is there. But I might just leave it alone for now because that's quite an odd setup.
I don't know anything about that old school MAF either. Like,
it's just a flap that it lets air in, and the amount of air that's going in opens the flap to a certain amount. So like the faster the air is going in, the further the flap opens.
Oh, okay. So all that handle's doing is like...
forcing it open and making it think it's got heaps of air.
So, okay. So you probably have to pull that flap for the gas so the timing goes, ooh, it's wide open throttle.
Oh, and to get it to start on gas or something.
Or even just run correctly. It might be like you have to have
like
it
a
open
choke,
a certain amount.
like a gas choke or something. If you know, put it in the comments because we've got no idea when it comes to gas. All right, let's ignore that then. And what are we doing? Run it a bit longer?
Yeah, I guess so.
See if this coolant goes everywhere.
Yay.
Do you want to man the battery again?
Sure thing.
Fuel battery. All right, so before we try and run this thing anymore, I'm going to put some fresh fuel in the fuel tank, try and mix up that old stuff, and hopefully get a flush with some new stuff out. Then when we're ready to connect up the original fuel system, we can put some fresh fuel in again, and it'll be nice fuel to the front. So I was going to drain the tank, but it seems like it's almost empty because it is struggling to come out the other end. So if this keeps going and we can't find an end of the fuel, then I will drain it properly. But for now, this seems to work. I'll walk over here. I'll plug the fuel pump back in. Seems to be happy. And we'll fire up again. Jackson can get all the smoke on camera this time. The fuel pressure has returned into that canister, so it is running low on fuel. So it's just run out already. So I reckon that's all we had in the tank. Stop smoking as well. So all that trans fluid has burnt off of the cylinders. She's not running mint though. Drink up, little buddy. So I just called Jackson over because to me, that sounds very empty. So I think we should put some fuel in it, proper amount of fuel, and try and run it properly. So we're reasonably confident in this fuel system. So we're going to fill this thing up with about 20 millilitres. Hopefully we can plug in the original fuel pump and lines into the injectors and it will fire off by itself. It's still running a bit weird, obviously, but we can sort that out later. The new fuel system is still hooked up, refueled with fuel. We've got about 15 litres in the fuel tank, so I'm hoping this will pump nice steady stream into that container over there, And then if that works, we can connect the original fuel system back up to the injectors, get rid of the Ghetto fuel system and try again. So you want to chuck that battery in and then we'll try and start her up again.
Oh, look at that. That's way better.
It's still grotty, but it is way, way better. I might just let it go for a bit, hey?
Yeah.
That's so brown. It's gonna need another fuel filter anyway. So at least the tank was empty, so there's not a whole lot to contest with. I feel like I'm 3 feet tall. Why is this so hard to work on? It's a bloody Commodore.
It's not mine, it's a man's car. Man's
Stupid. Lower your car. Make it easy to get in the engine bay.
Yeah.
I mean, jack stands would probably not help, but...
Should we throw in a photo of me kneeling down to work on one of my Golfs?
Yes. The microphone's gone flat, so we're just going to have to swap to my phone for a little bit. So we've got the original fuel hose down there attached to this length of fuel hose, which connects to the fuel rail. So this is just a long piece of fuel hose. So we're running on the original tank and fuel pump. So I'll just prime it a few times. And crank her up. Hopefully it starts. Like a dream. So it still runs a little rough, so I reckon one of the injectors might be no good. So we can run some injector cleaner through it or diagnose that later. But for now, I'll just let it sit here and idle away.
Yep, it sure does. Oh yeah.
This side's making funky noises.
Yeah, it sure is. Open diff things. Yep. There's a lot of rust coming out. Yeah, a surprising amount of rust came out.
Also, the oil gauge is 4 out of 5 on the scale of whatever it is. 40 to 50 psi? 40 out of 50 psi? I don't know, seems good. Let's change the oil again and try and drive it. Jackson, with his superior grip strength, got the old filter off, which we put on a little bit earlier today.
I hate when you did that.
A little bit of old used oil. Chuck it back on, lad. Chuck it back on. New oil filter in, new oil in. So this is the second change for today. So this is nice and happy now. So I think what we'll do is put the air filter all back together, fix that hose, and then we can let it sit here and run for half an hour or so. New air filter going in. Nice and clean compared to the other grotty one over there. All of the coolant hoses are hooked back up. Just got to sort out this fuel line and then we can put this thing on the ground and see if it moves under its own power. It's time. Car's back on the ground. Engine bay's all sorted. We're going to try and jump in this thing, start her up, chuck it in reverse. Got a little bit of leeway to jump on the brakes that don't really work. Handbrake works nicely and neutral works. So we'll give it a shot and go from there. Will this drive for the first time under its own power in over 12 years?
See if all the lights work as well.
Do that in a minute. I'm too excited. All right, pump the brakes a couple of times. Chuck it in reverse. It's holding it. It's moving. Neutral. Drive.
Well, it works. The brakes are definitely dragging, so we'll have to fix that. But we have a driving VK Berlina.
So it's day 2 on the VK here. Now I need to service this diff because we don't know when the oil was last changed and it has been sitting for a really long time. The first thing I noticed is this diff doesn't have a filler plug. It has a little rubber boot that just pushes in, and there's no threads in the back of the diff hat either, so quite a weird one. We've just ordered a fuel pump, so we're going to have to replace that today because it stopped working, which is awesome. And then we found some cracked fuel lines as well, so we'll be doing that, and we're hoping later today we can drive it to the original owner. But we'll see how far we can get, fingers crossed, because it's the last day of the weekend and Jackson's here. It's very grey. Also, there's no drain plug on this diff, and when you pop this cover off, it goes all over the sway bar. Engineering. So I just got Jackson to take the handbrake off and put it in neutral. So now we can spin this wheel and I can see that the diff is an open center because that one's not doing anything. And if anything, it's going the opposite direction, which means this is an open diff. So I'm going to get some brake cleaner, fill this thing up, and then also clean up this mating surface and do the same thing on the diff hat, and then I'll glue it back on and fill it back up with oil. So we got good old Toyota black sealant on this diff cover, so we're just doing the bolts up now. We'll let that all seal off, and then while we're waiting for that to harden or dry, whatever you call it, I got a new fuel pump from the boys at Auto Pro, so thank you very much to them. And we've got a new fuel filter, so we'll chuck those in. Then we should be able to put diff oil in this thing, put it back on the ground, and then we can go to the front and finish up what we have to do there. Okay, so we've got the diff resealed, so I'm just waiting for that to go off. And then I've got the plug still just hanging out, so I need to put some oil in there. And then I noticed some of the fuel lines are cracked, so we've got some new fuel lines to replace those. The fuel pump has stopped working entirely this morning. We went to move it earlier and it just didn't, so new fuel pump. And then also while I'm under here, the fuel filter is here, so I'll be doing that as well. So just a bit of everything under the back here. It's all very awkward and hard to film, but we should be on the road shortly.
This is a new fuel pump. It is part number GE034 and it's made in Australia. The pump itself, it comes with a new insulating band, which is always handy. And it comes with bits and pieces,
Gubbins,
shenanigans. It looks like
wiring covers.
Yeah, I say it looks like spark plug things.
Boots.
Boots, yeah.
What's the part number on that? Is it a Bosch one? No, it's not a Bosch one.
No, GE034.
There's a Bosch one under here.
It's a Goss. It's a Goss Boss. Vehicle Mechatronics. The genuine alternative.
The genuine replica. Fuel pump dampener. So we're going to bypass this for now because they are prone to leaking, and my boss isn't planning on driving this thing regularly at the moment, so it shouldn't make too much of a difference. But I will be able to put that back in if he does want it later. So I'm just going to go through and take out all the old rubber line that's back here and replace them one by one because there's a few and they're all cracked. So I've got all the old fuel system out. So the new fuel pump and the old fuel pump look the same, which is pretty good. The only difference being that this one's a little longer, but it'll be all right. And the terminals on this one are ring terminals, whereas the terminals on the old one are spade terminals. So I'll have to swap those over in a minute. Got the fuel damper out. These things are prone to leaking. So I have taken it out, but I'll put it aside and keep it just in case they want to put it back in at a later date. Then all of the old fuel line can get replaced because a bunch of it is crusty. This piece is probably the nicest piece in the lot. and then I don't have a replacement for this one. So this goes from the fuel tank to the fuel pump. So hopefully this one doesn't leak, because that's the only one I can't replace right now. So let's get under the car, install all that stuff, and we should be able to move to the front. So just need to crimp this one on. We did put these around the wrong way, so there is a big one and a small one. So if you're doing this at home, make sure you put the correct terminal on the correct wire. Learn from our mistakes. Luckily, I have a drawer full of terminals. So the GOS fuel pump insulator is slightly too small to actually get gripped by that thing. Now I could bend the hell out of this and make it work, but this isn't my car, so I'm trying to do it as nicely as I can. So I'm going to put the old fuel insulator over the new one and then try and get it to all bolt up. Slightly longer bolt helped fix this situation, but now we are double insulated and the fuel pump will be very attached in just a moment. Please steal your leather.
There you go. There's the tool right there. Make sure you get a good shot of that. Yep.
Where's the writing?
What do you need?
Leatherman. So I'm just going to crimp this terminal a little tighter and put it back on.
Do you know a good remedy for keeping things from falling in your eyeballs? Let us know.
In the comments.
Some sort of clear plastic
that you can see through.
You can see, yeah, some sort of see-through plastic shielding your eyes. It's alright, fellas, we've got the safety squints on.
Look how cracked that hose is. I hope you can see that on camera. Watch your eyeballs.
I wasn't. Jeff's got it all together now. He's just going to go turn the key to make sure that it's all together and doesn't leak and it all works, and get it going, mate. Ooh, that's a good sound.
And it works consistently, which is heaps better than the last one.
Yeah.
Let's fix the front.
All right. Before we go up the front, Jeff, let's put oil in this diff before you forget.
Sounds good.
If you know why there's like chicken wire or sort of looking stuff inside the power steering reservoir, please let us know, because it's very weird and we don't know why it is doing, or why that's in there. Why is that in there?
You know when you buy a new tool, you just want to use it for everything. Alright, so we've taken the belts off. There is one left still with the power steering, so we're going to have to put the car on jack stands. But we currently have the back in the air on jack stands, so we want to take the back off of jack stands, put the front on jack stands, but we want to check that the diff and stuff isn't leaking. So I'm going to start the car, put it in gear, let it spin the diff a bit and get some fluids around, let the fuel pump through. I'll fix the fuel pump, the fuel line situation that was over here. So we just need to do that, and then we can put this thing on jack stands, get the final belt changed over, and then
Just needed the coolant and they're pretty much done, I think. Need the brakes. To check the brakes.
Yeah, brakes. Yeah, especially.
Check the trams, just a few little things. So it should be pretty quick.
So we're pretty certain that it's not getting fuel to the
New pump.
new pump. No. Nothing.
Try and swap the polarity then, I guess. Turn the key.
Okay.
Yeah. Nothing. Yep. Yep.
Yep.
Ooh.
Oh, there's a hole in the exhaust. That's why it sounds weird. Okay. Yeah, that did suck.
Sorry about the gap in time lapses. Jackson's phone just went flat. So I fixed the fuel line back here. I jumped underneath. We've swapped the belts over. We left the aircon one off for now because the aircon is not plumbed up anyway. Jackson is currently fighting with the fan bolts, putting it all back together because it is a misery. And then once we're done with that, we're going to check the trans fluid and then probably give it a test drive. So I'll chuck you back on time lapse and we'll update you when we get there. We're all done. We've got the alternator bolt in, got the belts on nice and tight. We left the aircon one off because it doesn't have aircon anyway, like it doesn't work. So Jackson, start the car and it should be good to go. There's no battery in it.
There's no battery in it.
I'm an idiot. There's the battery, that's where I left it. Go on. So we'll let this thing run until the thermostat opens and then we can top up the coolant. Alright, so we're struggling to get coolant back into this thing, so it's been a bit of a pain. But we filled up the overflow and we're just going to try and let it get up to temperature and see how we go.
Right, so it's sitting here idling. It's idling nicely. At 800 RPM. It's got oil pressure. It's charging. Temp gauge is coming up. And we've even got almost half a tank of fuel. Bloody not bad, eh? Just gonna put injector cleaner. Fuel system extreme clean. First turn, not bad at all. If you know how to turn off first gen Commodore interior lights while the door's open, please write it down in the comments.
Alright, we're in the VK and we're going to try and go get some lunch.
Finally.
It's like 2 o'clock already.
It is like 3:30.
Oh, it's 3:30 already. We started at 8, quarter past 8.
Quarter past 8, yeah.
So let's try and get to the servo / food establishment.
Keen for that.
Let's go. Alright, so we're about to try and drive this thing on the road for the first time in 12 years. We'll do a lap of the block first, make sure it's okay, and then we'll go to the service station.
Pretty keen, to be honest.
I'm really hungry. It actually feels really good, other than the tyres being not round.
Yeah. It definitely has a wobble.
Speedo started working.
Oh, it is working. It's...
Well, we might be in trouble here.
What the actual heck is going on with that?
What is going on?
Apparently we're doing 100 k's an hour, stops.
That fuel pump's real loud.
That fuel pump is like not normal. That's like VL turbo fuel pump loud.
It's like Bosch 044 loud.
Yeah.
We're doing 200. I'm about to stop and we're doing 200 kilometers an hour on the speedo.
So that went pretty well. We've been driving for about 20 minutes or so far.
Yep.
We're a little far from home to be comfortable, but
Emily is at home and she is keeping her phone with her.
Yeah.
So we have backup. I brought pliers. I didn't bring any other tools.
I did see that, and 2 fire extinguishers.
2 fire extinguishers.
So we can man them both.
Let's get lunch.
Yeah, keen for food. So we've had some food. We're just got to air the tyres up to get some fuel, and then hit the road. We should be
half an hour
pretty good.
or so.
Yeah, half an hour.
Let's get into it.
Bloody oath. $52.49.
Cruising.
Cruising.
Been driving for 5 or 6 minutes since we left lunch. Seems good. We've been up to speed. We went up to about 90, I think. Judging by the other cars, because the speedo is pegged at 200.
Flat out, mate.
Flat out. It drives really well.
Surprisingly well.
And the more we drive it, the better the tyre flat spots seem to get, because it was a bit rough to start with.
Yeah, we put a fair bit of air back in those tyres.
Just to try and persuade them back to a circular shape. That speedo is absolutely pegged.
What's going on over there?
We've been driving for about 20-25 minutes. We are almost there now. So this thing keeps getting better and better the more we drive it. The injectors are cleaning themselves up. The fuel system's just getting better. The new fuel pump is very loud, which is a little annoying, but it is an external pump, so that kind of happens. Everything feels really good. The tires are getting better, but they definitely have flat spots. Brakes are getting better. They don't feel as warped as they did when we first started, so obviously a lot of that rust and stuff's coming off. Everything's just getting a lot better. So we're just going to pull up in a minute and that'll be the end of the video, really.
Stoked.
Yeah, I'm really happy.
31 gang.
Yo! So we've made it this far. We've made it about 30 Ks to the beach. So it's a nice picturesque way to finish the video. The original owner doesn't want to be on camera, which I don't really blame him. So this thing's going to be going to its new original home in just a few minutes. So if you haven't subscribed, please do. And if you want to come back next week and see the new Falcon project, it'll be going back to the original owner as well. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.